Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to be comparing a Mercedes G63 G-Wagon to the V8 Land Rover Defender. First and foremost though, as always, if you're stopping in for the first time, I'm going to include a link to my car buying guide in the description down below if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car. Let's get right into the comparison. Starting things off under the hood of the Defender, we have a supercharged 5-liter V8 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 518 horsepower and then 461 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 time is 4.9 seconds, which puts it right in between the 550 and the 63, because the G63 has a 0 to 60 time of 3.9 seconds, but then the G550 G-Wagon has a 0 to 60 time of 5.4 seconds. Both those are more expensive than the Defender, funny enough. Anyways, popping over to the 63, we have a twin-turbo 4-liter V8 that goes through a 9-speed automatic transmission. Is good for 577 horsepower and then 627 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you get the 550 version of the G-Wagon, you have a detuned version of this engine that is good for 416 horsepower and then 450 pound-feet of torque, rather. And so, again, the Defender is right in between both of those from a power perspective. Now, popping back over to the Defender, you guys can see that we've got the logo there front and center. I love how we have the gloss black here in the center of this Defender. It definitely creates some cool contrast, especially since this one has the matte paint, which again looks just fantastic. So it's Carpathian Gray. It's a special paint color for the Carpathian edition of the Defender, and yeah, I think they did a great job with just the contrast on this version of the V8 Defender. Love the LED lights here. The accent lights and everything, I think they look absolutely fantastic. Got the fog lights down below, and then you guys can see how the whole front end is kind of like sculpted so that it is better for approach angle. And speaking of the front end, we have 11.5 inches of ground clearance because this has the air suspension. You got skid plates underneath. You got the funny tow hook there in the center as well. But yeah, definitely solid from an off-road perspective with the specs. 11.5 inches of ground clearance, again, at the top of the air suspension. Still just fantastic. Now, going from that over to the G-Wagon, you guys will see this is a lot boxier from a design perspective. And you notice it's got the Mercedes logo. This one's also in a very interesting color. Turn signal indicators there on the top of the hood, which is also pretty interesting. And then you got the signature LED lights with the AMG logo. And you got the camera there at the front end. And then you have like the brush guard here at the bottom, just down below that grille that I pointed at. Ground clearance, we do need to mention 9.5 inches with the G-Wagon. It doesn't have like air suspension or anything like that. And so it does have less ground clearance compared to the Defender. So I guess that's definitely something to take into account. And yeah, that color is just crazy. Now, popping over to the Defender, with this particular package, 22s are actually standard. You can option out 20-inch wheels if you want. One way to tell it's a V8 Defender is it'll have blue brake calipers in the front, but then the backs will be black. So that's one of the ways to tell it's a V8. But yeah, the smallest wheel you could fit, because of the rotors with the Defender V8, would be about a 19-inch wheel, so you can't fit something terribly small. So, I mean, it obviously is a very capable off-road vehicle, but it isn't necessarily set up that way from a wheel perspective because of how big the wheels are. I don't think Land Rover really expects people to take the V8 Defenders off-road. Hence the street tires and the 22s. Notice the Defender logo there on the side, and then the V8 badge down below, and then the mirrors gloss black. Again, you'll see kind of like a lot of contrast between the matte paint and then the gloss black elements, like on the door handles and everything. It really does, like, the gloss elements on the door handles rather, but it really does look like a vehicle that's kind of been wrapped, and I don't know, I think it's cool. And the side profile looks great with the Defender. Now, this isn't a lower ride height setting if you guys are wondering with the air suspension. When you have the air suspension raised all the way up, the Defender sits quite a bit higher than the G-Wagon. Again, has more ground clearance, so that makes sense, but yeah, it definitely does sit higher. But when you have it in the normal setting, they're relatively close from a height perspective. The G-Wagon might be slightly taller. Now, with the G63 22s, again, you can get, I believe you can option out 20s, but anyways, 20s would be the smallest wheel option that you'd be able to fit. Maybe, you could maybe fit 19s, again, because of those massive AMG brake rotors and the caliper as well. And again, they don't really expect people to take this off-road. You can see this suspension. It is adjustable at the shocks, which is pretty cool. Got the oversized fender flares as well, V8 bi-turbo badge. And then you got the fixed side steps with the exhaust tips that poke out the side. That's part of the 63 package. The 550 has exhaust tips that are kind of hidden underneath for better breakover angle, actually. And, you know, it looks good from a side view perspective. And you can see in the standard ride height setting, it sits pretty tall. Now here's the key fob for the Defender. Pretty normal setup with a Land Rover, right? You can turn on the lights, you can open up the hatch, all that. Now, just like most vehicles in this very small segment, you open up the hatch that way, which is, it's unique for sure. And the window is fully attached with it, so it's not like a Wrangler or Bronco where you have to open them up separately. You got the Defender logo there, which is pretty cool. And then you got the recovery hooks here on the back end. And then one thing that's cool about this segment of SUV is it's really spacious because of the height, right, with the boxy design. And you got tons of cargo space back there, frankly. So they did a good job with that. You got the air suspension to raise and lower it from a rear perspective. And I know this is a random time to mention this, but I think we should mention curb weight. So with the V8 Defender, 5,735 pounds if you get a fully loaded four-door. If you get the two-door, it's going to be lighter. Which is crazy that they're offering a V8 two-door Defender. That is such a cool vehicle. Not a lot of people order them, but I mean, it's just crazy that they are making that. I mean, think if like a Wrangler Rubicon 392 was a two-door. Like, just, yeah. Got an outlet here in the back, so just tons of practical things added. And I love like the sky roofs and everything, or the sky roof design there in the Defender. I think it looks really cool. Well, they call them skylights, but anyways, going from that part to the rest of the rear. Again, you got that like boxy upright styling here, super distinctive taillights with the rear of the Defender, and I think they look just absolutely fantastic again. And then you can see the parking sensors here. You got the aggressive exhaust tips that come with the V8 out either side. And then this is a chance to talk about the suspension quickly. We have independent front and rear suspension with the Defender. So again, air suspension, but it's also independent front and rear. So it definitely does kind of differentiate it quite a bit compared to the G-Wagon. So it does make them ride substantially different. Like the Defender, it's basically, it's unibody too. So it's basically a car. And so it rides like a car. And it definitely has a completely different feel because of that. Now, popping from the Defender back to the G-Wagon, you guys can see the key fob here for the G63. Really cool with the finish on it and all that. You got the AMG logo there on the back. And then you can see another little AMG badge right there. And just like the Defender, right, you've got the opening and closing. Now, the one thing the G-Wagon does have is it has the cool like mechanical sound when you open up the doors and all that, which, and when you lock the doors, it just sounds really robust. So it's just a sound thing. It's kind of like part of the vehicle. But again, same thing, right? It's really upright, so there's tons of space back there. It looks like the Defender might have more usable space though than the G-Wagon from a storage space perspective. Again, that's such a cool sound. Now again, upright boxy design, got the spare tire there on the back just like the Defender. G63 badge. I guess we'll talk about curb weight quickly. So 5,845 pounds, so it does weigh more. You got the receiver hitch down below, solid rear axle with the G-Wagon, and then his body on frame. And then popping here to the interior of the Defender, you guys can see here with the rivets there on the door panel. Again, looks cool. It has this like utilitarian, like rugged off-roader appearance to the interior that I really like. And again, it definitely like sets the tone for the driving experience. And then here are the seats. They have a bunch of different textures on them, which is kind of interesting. So you have like a smooth texture, you got like a more like rough texture, and then you have the like Alcantara inserts, and then that's kind of another texture. And again, it's definitely interesting for the feeling of the seat. But room back there's spacious. If you've been in the back seat of like a Wrangler or a new Bronco, it's pretty similar to those from a rear seat perspective. You can see the climate controls there for the rear with the vents as well. And then of course cup holder armrest, you got that in like every single vehicle. And again, those skylights, those are definitely cool. And then panoramic sunroof, which also lets in even more light. And popping from that over to the G63, you can see tons of nice material use here on the door panel with the leather. So it definitely looks like quite a bit more upscale, right? And they're kind of going for more of a luxury theme rather than that utilitarian theme with the rear Burmester sound system. Got the heated seats there, window control, and then notice the AMG plaque. And then look at the seats again. They have more of like a luxury car appearance rather than like a rugged off-roader appearance like you have with the Defender. Room is pretty similar. It might be a little bit more cramped in the G-Wagon. You guys can kind of see it looks like it. Vents back there you can see, and then you got the climate controls for the rear, and you got a little like storage cubby right there, which is kind of interesting. And then again, cup holder armrest situation. And then you can see going from that back over to the Defender. Again, that theme with like the utilitarian appearance continues onto the door panel, and then you got all the exposed rivets, which look really cool. Window controls, you got the mirror adjustment. Mirrors do power fold in. You got memory seats. The mirrors also have blind spot monitoring, and then you got a couple speakers for the Meridian sound system. You get your V8 badge right there. Again, another one. And then the front seats, just like the rear. But notice the overall shape of the seats actually super similar to the G-Wagon. That's kind of interesting. Really nice display with the pedals, actually. Got the parking brake, and then you can see the padding there, and then on the dash as well. And it looks really nice. It's actually a soft touch for a large portion of it, but then there's lots of it that is not as well. Now popping over the G-Wagon, again, that like luxury theme continues there with like the quilted leather, the wood trim with this particular one. And then notice the finish on the window controls. Blind spot monitoring for the mirror, just like with the Defender. And then you got all your seat adjustments, heated, cooled seats for the front. You got memory seats, again, another speaker for the Burmester sound system, AMG plaque. And then those like pillows for the headrests. But yeah, look at the seats. Like they're pretty similar in like the shape of them. Obviously, the skins over the seats are a lot different. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then notice just material use. There's quite a bit more like leather and all of that. There's a little bit of plastic, right? But a lot more use of leather there with the G-Wagon. And then starting up the Defender, got that cool digital gauge cluster. Now here is the steering wheel, and this is my favorite steering wheel for a new Defender. Now the reason is you got the Alcantara around, which looks cool. You got really nice paddle shifters there on the back, and then even the airbag cover has stitching on it, so again it makes it feel more upscale. And then you have regular practical controls like cruise control, controls for the center stack, voice command controls. Got like a turn signal light stock, windshield wiper stock as well. And again, it's a good looking steering wheel. It still has that utilitarian look, but it's more upscale. Now full digital gauge cluster here in the center. Resolution on it is fantastic. You guys can see with the V8 Defender, average miles per gallon 14. With the G-Wagon, you get similar MPG with it, so they're both equally uneconomical from a fuel economy perspective. And then there's other menus you can scroll through there to see different bits of info with the Defender, right? And this is across the Land Rover lineup. They have this in a bunch of other vehicles for this full digital display. And I think they've done a good job with that. Now, infotainment system. I really like the infotainment system of the Defender, and the camera system too, frankly. So it has this cool like 360 camera system, and I love how it has like a regular mode and then has like an off-road mode to let you know what's happening. And you guys can see there with the locker system, you have like a center locker and a rear locker with the Defender. So definitely practical from an off-road perspective if you actually ever take it off-road, right? And they just have so much cool off-road tech here, right? Where you can see exactly where you are, what's happening with the vehicle, what's locked, what's unlocked, all of that. And yeah, I think they've done a good job to like sell the off-roadiness of the Defender because of all the tech they have to help out with off-roading. It's like, again, people are probably never going to take it off-road, but it has all the tech to make it so that it would be a really simple experience, and it'd be awesome as well. So I think that was a job well done. And then yeah, look at this from the camera perspective. Like you have this 360 view of the camera. Like, I mean, what more could you ask for if you were to take one of these out and rock crawl with it? I think that it would be pretty cool to be able to use all that. Now down below we have a shifter for the 8-speed automatic transmission. It does have that manual shift function. Again, you can use the paddles or the shifter. And then we've got our like climate control section and other controls. So notice hill descent control, auto stop start. You got stuff for the climate system right there. And then you guys saw the air suspension. You can raise and lower it. And then notice with the controls, they're multi-function, so they control so many different things, from like fan speed to the seats to the drive modes. And with the Defender, notice that we've got a bunch of off-road drive modes. There is, dynamic and eco and comfort that's for on-road, but notice the majority of the drive modes are for different off-road circumstances, and they will adjust the air suspension and, the engine and all the other stuff, depending on the drive mode, like, locking or unlocking the differential with it to basically put you in the best possible position depending on what you're encountering with the Defender. And the four-wheel drive system of the Defender is also super advanced. That's another cool thing about it. And so again, the Defender's definitely on the techie side of things. Got low range as well, right? Pretty typical for an off-roader. Well, you need it, right? Got the charging ports right there, and then you have like the center console arm, like grab handle thing, right? And then notice a couple cup holders, and then storage space is great, and it is also a refrigerator, which is pretty cool. Got the wireless phone charger. That's definitely nice for off-road adventures to have a fridge as the center console. You can keep your water nice and cool, your sandwiches, whatever you want to take out. And then you got more storage space there with another Defender logo. And then popping up top, you guys can see with the panoramic sunroof that we mentioned earlier, got the sunglass holder, and then you've got the camera mirror as well, which is a cool bit of safety tech. You guys know I'm a huge fan of that, and more automakers, frankly, need to have it in their cars. Popping back over to the G63 G-Wagon. Got a cool digital gauge cluster. Now, I love the look of the steering wheel on the G-Wagon. Again, definitely has that luxury appearance to it. They're not trying to go towards the off-road side of things. They're definitely just doing nice, high, upscale materials. They look great, but notice you got the cool controls there for like the infotainment system and for the center stack, and then you got your regular stocks. It does have a column shifter, which frees up space, and it's kind of a Mercedes thing to do. But the gauge cluster here, great resolution, just like the Defender, super customizable, just like the Defender. You can see a bunch of different bits of information, and the cool thing is you can actually change the design. So if you don't like how it looks, they have a couple different designs that you go through. I'm curious if there's someone that's like hacked into the system and like basically has like maybe there's like an app or something out there where you can make it even different than what Mercedes shows. I don't know, but I think that'd be pretty interesting. But anyways, infotainment system, you guys can see from a camera perspective, the G63 is great. It has this full 360 camera view, so that helps out. But the thing that's weird is the 550 doesn't have all the camera views, which is kind of annoying. That's supposed to be like the off-road one, and it doesn't have as many cameras because apparently the brush guard's in the way, but it's, I don't know, it's weird. Massaging seats as well with the G-Wagon. Now, the G-Wagon doesn't have a touchscreen. It's got Mercedes' older unit. They're going to add in Mercedes' newer infotainment system in the future. We don't know exactly when, but I'm sure that it'll be soon that they'll add in the newer infotainment system, but they'll also probably change up the powertrains, and so it'll be like a catch-22. It'll be like, you get the new infotainment system, but now you don't get a V8 or something like that. And then notice leather trim all over the dash. You got wood trim even there on the grab handle. And then more speakers for the Burmester sound system. Again, full-on luxury car. There's no hiding that. Got the auto stop start. Notice the vents. Now, we have a pretty cool system. So you have a center locker, a rear locker, and a front locker. So this is a more old school system compared to the Defender. But basically, you can lock up the G-Wagon so that all four wheels are sending the same amount of power to the ground, and they're always getting power, so it can crawl out of like any situation. But again, it's more of an old school system versus the Defender's air suspension and all of its drive modes and fancy all-wheel drive system, right? The G-Wagon's like, nope, we're just going to do 3 lockers and we're going to call it a day. But notice more controls for the infotainment system. You got the drive modes as well with the G-Wagon. And again, notice there's like a lot of on-road drive modes. There's not any off-road drive modes because they don't think that people are going to take the 63 off-road because, the 550 is the off-road version of the G-Wagon, which I think is kind of interesting that there is such a thing as an on-road and off-road version of a G-Wagon because it's supposed to be an off-roader. Anyways, low range, you guys saw you got adjustments for the suspension, the exhaust, stability control, and then center console. Pretty normal. It's not a fridge, though. Man, that Defender's looking pretty cool now, actually. And then notice pretty normal with the glove box setup. And don't worry, we'll talk about pricing in a second, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, up top here, really nice headliner. And then you can see just a regular sunroof, no panoramic or anything. You can't get a panoramic sunroof. You don't have any cool skylights or anything like that in the G-Wagon. Again, it's kind of, even though it's the more expensive one, it's a little bit more basic. So let's sum things up with this comparison. First off, from a price point perspective, a fully loaded V8 Defender, stickers for about $120,000, whereas a base model G550 stickers for $130,000. Now, a fully loaded G550, like 160 something, a 63 starts at about 160-ish. Fully loaded, you're over $200,000. Now, that's before dealer markups. There are a lot of Land Rover dealers that are actually selling Defenders like Land Rover of Lehigh only at MSRP. Mercedes dealers, it's a lot harder to find a G-Wagon at MSRP. I'm sure there's some out there, but most of them have crazy markups, even though the market's cooled down quite a bit. G63s, for example, were $300,000 at the beginning of this year, and now they're struggling to sell for like $200,000. It is just, they have tanked in value. It is crazy. The G-Wagon market is just getting slaughtered. Maybe it's because of the V8 Defender, because people are realizing that you can get the G-Wagon experience at a fraction of the cost. So again, the Defender is more on the techie side of things with the off-road stuff and with the interior. Like, there's a lot of tech in the G-Wagon, but you guys can tell it's definitely more on the old school side of things. That's why it doesn't have air suspension. It has just, you know, it does have adjustable shocks, frankly, but it just has more like a standard setup, right? It has independent front suspension, but it has a solid rear axle and it's body on frame. Whereas the Defender, being unibody, independent suspension all around, air suspension, right? It's just more of like a modern car-like SUV. They're both extremely capable off-road. I've watched so many off-road reviews with both vehicles, and they can both tackle crazy things if they're slightly modified. That's the one thing I do want to mention about both these is, right, most people are never going to take these off-road, but if you do want to take them off-road, you have to modify both of them, because both of them come with wheels. They're way too big from the factory. Even their off-road, you know, tire and wheel setups from the factory just don't suffice. So if you actually do plan on taking them off-road, expect to buy smaller wheels than what you're going to get from the factory, and you're going to have to buy some new rubber as well, and potentially lift them too. I've seen a lot of the videos I've seen with them has been, you know, either G-Wagon or Land Rover Defender lifted, and that's what actually makes it so that it can do, you know, the all-wheel drive systems with both of them are amazing, but they just need a little bit more ground clearance to really tackle on some crazy stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting comparison overall. I want you guys to let me know which one you would pick. I guess my final say with this particular comparison is the Defender gives you like 90% of the G-Wagon experience at a fraction of the cost, right? The G-Wagon has the cool sound with the doors, and it is faster if you get the 63, and again, it's a G-Wagon, so there's an experience associated with that. So that's that extra 10%, and so you just have to decide for yourself, is that extra 10% worth paying like twice as much money, pretty much? So there you go.